Hari Hari, Bhagavad Gita, Teacher Certification, Module 3.2, Dashamrita Gita number 9. Chapter 5, Text 24. Yonta Sukhontara Ramas Tatantar Jyotir Eva Yahat Sayogi Brahma Nirvarnam Brahma Bhuto Dhigachati. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward is actually the perfect mystic. They are liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately they attain the Supreme. So there are a number of very, very important terms in this verse. This verse does one of the best jobs in the Gita in terms of giving us a very specific and clear definition of enlightenment, of self realization, if you will. So, the terms in this verse, very important that you understand them and their philosophical concepts completely and thoroughly, because it is the basis of understanding all of the spirituality regarding enlightenment and moksha that comes in the Bhagavad Gita. So, I'm going to highlight those terms and we will explore them. You see in the first line, Anta Sukha. This means happiness from within. Antar Arama. Arama means pleasure. Antar Arama, pleasure, experience from within. This is referring actually to meaning. We'll explore more in detail in a moment. Antar Jyoti. Jyoti means illumination or light. This is referring to inner understanding, awareness, knowledge. Antar Jyoti. Brahma Nirvanam. I'm not going to go into the Buddhist definition of Brahma Nirvana. We're speaking on the Gita, we're exploring the Gita, so I will keep the definition as based on the teachings of the Gita. But the Buddhist definition, as far as I've been taught and understand, it's 99.9% similar to the definition we find throughout the Gita. But I will let other Buddhists speak to that. But Brahma Nirvana. Then we have Brahma Bhuto. So we're going to explore these two, Brahma Nirvana and Brahma Bhuta, because they are often, too often, used interchangeably, and you cannot, they're misunderstood. And people say one meaning the other, or the other meaning the opposite. So we're going to have a clear understanding of these two terms, Brahma Nirvanam and Brahma Bhuta. So let's start. I want to give an allegory, if you will, that'll help us really understand this issue of moksha, self realization or enlightenment, whatever English word you choose to use. So these terms that Krishna has used, Anta Sukha, Anta Arama, and Anta Jyoti, these three are the components of what it means to be self realized. And as we know, we saw in the verse, Krishna says, one who's is active within, rejoices within, whose happiness is within, this person achieves the supreme stage. An individual has a mansion and is perfectly happy living in their mansion and the compound, right? They have no need to go outside their mansion, their property, for anything whatsoever. They're perfectly happy, satisfied, fully content within their mansion, their property. This is anta sukha. The living entity has no need, desire whatsoever in attempting to chase after the gratification of the senses or being attached to those experiences that pertain to the senses. Completely satisfied and connected to happiness within. Anta Sukha. Then there is the individual perfectly happy being at home, but also everything is available in the house. It's completely furnished from top to bottom. I recently did, well, not recently, it was earlier in the summer. I did a housewarming for an individual who had just bought quite literally a mansion. There was theater inside in the basement. There was a sauna. There was an indoor swimming pool. A half a dozen or a dozen bedrooms. Every possible amenity you can think of was in this individual's house. Wonderful grounds and gardens. I mean, one can go even beyond that, and we know the lifestyles of the rich and famous. I believe the show was called, where some of the athletes would have basketball courts, tennis courts on their property or inside the house. So this is what's available, right, in the mansion. Fully decked out. We can work from home. Fully uh, decked out office. Everything required for this individual to exist is on the property in the mansion. This is unto Arama. In other words, everything, this is referring to meaning, right? Everything that an individual wants, right? An individual wants a basketball court, a tennis court, pickleball court, home office, theater, sauna. Everything for the individual being's satisfaction is there available in this property, in this mansion. This is so unto Aram is referring to meaning. This individual can do whatever they want. It's all whatever the person desires, whatever their proclivities are, is available spiritually. This is not about material, satisfaction of the senses. Spiritually, we are spirit beings, but all that we require for meaning comes from within. This is Antararama. And then it's not enough. All right, the person is satisfied. They have all of this. They're perfectly happy being at home. They have all the different types of amenities that they may require to give them meaning to exist in this home and property. But there's also a requirement of knowledge. What's the use of having a swimming pool, an indoor swimming pool, if the individual doesn't know how to swim? What's the purpose of having a tennis court if you don't know how to play tennis, right? This is antarjoti. So there is understanding, there's knowledge of of the reality of what's going on within, the reality, the amenities, how to use how to turn on the movie screen in the theater, how to use the swimming pool, how to be able to swim, and so on and so forth. The office, everything that's involved in this property and mansion, we have the knowledge, the understanding. The individual has the knowledge, the understanding to make use of it. This is antarjoti. These three taken together is Brahma Bhuta. Let's continue to explore. Essential concepts. So, anta sukha, we talked about this, right? The feeling of happiness within the individual is perfectly satisfied living in their home. No desire, no need to, no requirement, if you will, to go out to experience satisfaction. Perfectly happy being within their own home. Anta arama. This is meaning, right? Within the home, there's everything we need to give us satisfaction and meaning to our existence. Within, we do not need an external source to give us meaning. Antarjoti, we have the knowledge, the understanding, the awareness to be able to make sense of it, to use, to experience, to choose this level of existence. Let's bring it to a more practical in our own life, setting aside this particular allegory. What does it mean? What is this? These three components of Brahma Bhuta, self-realization. That means we're not attached to issues of gratification of the senses. Doesn't mean we do not have preferences. Yeah, we may prefer that our pizza does not have pineapple on it. Sure, have preferences. It's not about preferences in our life. It's about whether or not we are attached to getting what we want or not getting what we want, receiving unintended, unforeseen consequences to our preferences, and being attached to the outcome to the extent that we lose, or rather, we lose control of ourselves, and the Arisha Dvargas take control of us instead. So we're able to maintain self mastery. We're able to maintain, as Jesus would said, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Doesn't mean we do not experience ups and downs, doesn't mean we do not experience pain. What it does mean is that we recognize and we do not seek vengeance for the sake of vengeance itself upon other individuals who may be causing us discomfort. We do not allow anger, arrogance to intrude upon our relationships because we're not getting what we were attached to in a relationship. We're able to choose how we respond in every situation. And then meaning. Viktor Frankl describes this best in his book, In Search of Meaning. It is after the Bhagavad Gita, you've heard me say this before, after the Bhagavad Gita, it is the second most important book in my own life. It gives such, it opens up the meaning and it just highlights everything that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in terms of self-realization. This is unto arama, meaning that whatever may be happening to you externally, the individual, the self-realized enlightened being, is able to understand and give it meaning from within. It is a wonderful book when you read that book by Viktor Frankl. There's no question in my mind that he's describing individuals who, who's, including himself, survived the concentration camps in the 1940s. These individuals, himself included, did so by essentially being Brahmabhuta, experiencing horrific conditions, yet still, and in Viktor Frankl's own words, those who are able to find and see the meaning, those are the ones who actually survived. In his own words, he said those realized those individuals were actually more free than the guards who oversaw the camp itself. Most wonderful and powerful explanation of meaning and this principle of antarama in that book. And then antajoti, knowledge, awareness, having the ability to find meaning within, to connect to, and, and choose self mastery, choose not to give up this false idea, this attachment that happiness can only come from outside of ourselves. Recognizing there is and knowing there is and being able to experience that happiness that comes from within. Antarjoti. Again, referring to Viktor Frankl. So many of the individuals, unfortunate individuals who were in that situation, a terrible situation, did not have the knowledge, the awareness, the antarjoti, to know that their happiness did exist within. Meaning could be found within. So these three components is what it means to be self-realized. Moksha. Jiva Bhuta. This term is not in this particular verse, but it's important to understand and know this term, Jiva Bhuta, because it relates to another term following. Jiva Bhuta, the living entity controlled by the Rishidvargas. This Jiva Bhuta is you, I, the living, all of plants, animals, germs, all living beings, entities that are under the control of the Rishidvargas, under the control of material nature, Prakriti. Our ahankar, our mind and intelligence are infected with the Rishidvargas. Such living entities are called Jiva Bhuta. All right, we are controlled by the Rishidvargas. In contrast, there is a Brahma Bhuta, the living entity free of the Rishidvargas. This is Jivan Mukti. So it's important to understand the difference between these two, I wouldn't say categories, but yes, you can say categories of living entity. And the Jiva Bhuta, the ultimate goal, of course, of the Jiva Bhuta is to become Brahma Bhuta. All living entities, no matter what body they may be in, the body of a cat, that living entity, that spiritual being is Jiva Bhuta, but that spiritual being has the capacity to become Brahma Bhuta, to become free of the Rishidvargas, to become Jivan Mukti. Not in the cat of a body. Sorry, not in the body of a cat, forgive me. Uh, not in the body of a cat, but this living entity, all living entities, no matter the body they're in, have the ultimate capacity, ability to be Jivan Mukta. In fact, becoming liberated, free of these material bodies, is actually the natural state of the living entity. Being Jiva Bhuta is actually unnatural. Our constitutional nature is to be Jivan Mukti, is to express Anta Sukha, Anta Rama, Anta Jyoti. This is our natural state. So here we can understand the difference between Jiva Bhuta, living entities controlled by the Rishidvargas, and Brahma Bhuta, the living entities who are free, Jivan Mukti. Brahma Nirvana, the living entity free of both Rishidvargas and samsara. This is Videha Mukti, right? Videha Mukti means liberation, freedom from literally the material body. Videha. Videha means of the body. So Brahma Bhuta is a living entity free from the Irishadwaras, but still have a material body, right? These are the saints, the mystics that walk among us. They are Jivan Mukti, they are free of the Irishadvargas, they're experiencing Anta Sukha, Anta Rama, Anta Jyoti, and they're walking among us, but they have a material body. They're Brahma Bhuta, they're Jivan Mukti, but they have a material body. Once they pass from this world, they're free of karma, they're free of the Irishadvargas. They're also free of a material body, Videha. This is Brahma Nirvana. So Brahma Bhuta is the state of being free. Brahma Nirvana is the nature of one's existence when we are beyond this physical or tied or restricted by physical material realm. One can almost say Brahma Bhuta is the individual spirit soul. Well, that's true. We know that. And Brahma Nirvana is the place. I want to be very careful here because Brahma Nirvana is not necessarily a location, but just for the sake of understanding the difference between Brahma Bhuta and Brahma Nirvana, I will say Brahma Bhuta is the person, Brahma Nirvana is the place. But that's only for so we can understand the differentiation between the two. Brahma Nirvana is actually everywhere. There's no place in existence that is not Brahma Nirvana. It is our inability to be in harmony with, energetic harmony with Brahman, that it seems different. But I digress. That's a more higher understanding of Brahman. Brahman is everywhere. But anyways, so I hope I didn't digress too far to cause confusion. But suffice to say, Brahma Bhuta is a living entity free of the Irishadvargas, Jivan Mukti. Brahma Nirvana is that once we have shed this material body, we're free of the material restrictions. We exist in a space, if you will, that is Brahma Nirvana. Paramdhama. Now, this term, Paramdhama, is not in the verse. It's the supreme abode, or a relationship of love with the supreme. Paramdhama literally means the supreme abode, the supreme destination. I'm adding it here because it's connected to the understanding of moksha and so on and so forth. And I want to provide this chart, if you will, this graph, so that we can see all of this coming together visually. We have a visual representation of all these philosophical concepts bouncing, flying around. So let's look at it differently. Brahma Bhuta, right? Anta Sukha, Anta Rama, Anta Jyoti. Brahma Bhuta, self realization, spiritual realization. And then there is Brahma Nirvana. But there's also another option, if you will. Not only that the individual, Brahma Bhuta, the soul, spirit being, becomes self realized and goes on to achieve Brahma Nirvana, but there's another possibility, option. That option is Param Dhamma, that supreme abode, that supreme destination, which is a relationship of love with the supreme. So remember, Brahma Bhuta is Jivan Mukti. right? Freedom from the Arishadvargas. Still have a material body, like the saints and sages, the mystics among us, still have a material body, but Jivan Mukti. That individual is Brahma Bhuta. From there are two possibilities. Brahma Nirvana, Videha Mukti. Shed the material body, experience pure spiritual existence, unfettered, unrestricted existence in Brahman, Brahma Nirvana. Paramdhama is also Videha Mukti, pure spiritual existence, unbound, unfettered, unrestricted. Paramdhama, this is a relationship with the Supreme. However, there's always a however, isn't there? Bhakti. We have to choose love. It is only by choosing love, it is only by bhakti that we attain Paramdhama. Paramdhama has to be deliberately and intentionally chosen. Bhakti is actually, I don't want to go too far off into this right here in this module, but Paramdhama is actually even beyond Videha Mukti. So it's important to understand that Paramdhama, for the sake of understanding moksha, we can categorize Paramdhama as yes, moksha. But Paramdhama is, moksha is actually irrelevant to Paramdhama. Right? That relationship of love with the Supreme, that's Paramdhama, this relationship of love with the Supreme is not, has nothing to do, it's beyond, it's transcendental, even to moksha. It's, I would say moksha is secondary to relationship with the Supreme. It's, I forget where it was talked about that. Moksha itself is a handmaiden to the devotees who are in relationship with the Supreme. In other words, moksha is a servant to those individuals who have a relationship of love with the Supreme. I have not found that quote, but once I've done so, I will share it in a future class. But for understanding Paramdham in the context of moksha, this is where it would sit. It is Videha Mukti, but it has to be chosen. It requires a Brahma Bhuta individual to choose it, but it must be chosen. When one comes to the Brahma Bhuta stage, one can then choose bhakti and a relationship with the Supreme. Hari Hari.